Welcome back to the Lines College Football Podcast. I'm Brett Gibbons with Lines.com, and as always, I'm joined by the one and only Kelley Ford. Kelley, welcome back. We're talking Saturday games today. The season's growing long in the tooth. It's been here a while, and we won't have it for too much longer, sad to say. How are you feeling about the rest of the season?
I'm feeling great, Brett. It's the final weekend of October. Things get real in November in every sense of the word. So we've got one more week until we get to that point. College Football Playoff Selection Committee rankings coming out on Halloween night for the first time. That becomes all the buzz. I'd like to keep our focus on the regular season as much as possible. I know you feel the same way, so I'm very excited for one more week of college football without that distraction, if you will. I enjoy talking about it as much as the next person, but I really like the regular season and the importance that it has in our current postseason format.
Yeah, I'll be mad about the rankings. I will be. I am every year. I'll put out a tweet or two about it just because, that's what it's there for. It's TV ratings until the final edition of it. But, yeah, college football is a regular season sport, in my opinion. I enjoy the regular season, love bowl season, but to me, the playoffs just play such a little role in my enjoyment of the sport. Before we get into everything, though, don't forget to follow The Lines on Twitter at TheLinesUS. I'm at Road to CFB, and Kelley's work can be found at K Ford Ratings. We'll be here every single week for the remainder of the season, breaking down the college football Saturday slate as well as individual weeknight games. If you're looking for a weeknight breakdown, it's already posted. Go ahead and check it out here on our YouTube page. Kelley, is this the lightest slate that we've had all year? I didn't take a tally, but it kind of feels like it, no?
In terms of, the top-end blockbuster matchups, I think we've got maybe one, two you could argue. But, yeah, this is definitely one of the lighter slates. But, Brett, these are the weekends that are just ripe for college football chaos. We've seen it before. We will see it again. This season started out with a lot of it, and people kind of started talking about 2007. And I said, hey, nothing will make me happier, but let's just pump the brakes a little bit. We haven't gotten that level. Who knows, though? It can strike any week, and weeks like this are when it is prime for it. So, yeah, I'll give it to you. We maybe lack some of the blockbuster matchups at the top, but chaos can always reign.
Well, I don't even mean blockbuster because I don't care if there's blockbuster matchups or not. Though, I get excited about that, but I'm watching all the college football. I mean, just in sheer number of games. There's 47 games this Saturday, which is actually almost fewer than we have number of bowls. But nonetheless, there's some conference and college football playoff defining matchups on tap here in Week 9. Starting with, we have Iowa State, a 2.5-point favorite now, on the road at Baylor. This game carries an over-under 47.5 points. And look, we rarely skip straight to the afternoon window. I was perusing that early noon window, and I'm not an advocate of skipping college football games, but if you have to, absolutely have to run to the pumpkin patch or a last-second trunk or treat or wherever you're doing with the kids and dogs, you can get away with it, I suppose, this week at noon, because I'm starting off here at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. This game's on ESPN+. I know it's not a huge matchup, but I was like, really? We didn't even get that on an ESPNU or anything like that? Hey, whatever. I have ESPN+, so I'll probably watch this. There is a chance of rain this game. Very cold rain Saturday. I do believe we've got a big, our first big snowstorm of the season blowing through the upper Midwest there. Not much wind, though, which is good because wind is what really affects totals and game flow and stuff like that. Players are good enough now where they can absolutely play and throw in the rain. Right off the bat, I took Iowa State on the money line back when it was -1.5. I'd probably lean the points at this juncture. I like the money line because it was 1.5. You're saving a dumb 1-point winner or whatever. But yeah, at 2.5, I'd probably take the points here. Look, both of Baylor's FBS wins this season. A 26-point comeback on UCF, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I would say is probably not repeatable. Or I'm at least not projecting that week to week for Baylor. And then the 3-point win last week over Cincinnati that really could have gone either way. Iowa State, on the other hand, was looking really good heading into their bye week. They beat an improved Oklahoma State team, dominated TCU, and then handily beat Cincinnati. Now, I don't believe in the transitive property in college football. People love throwing it out every now and then. It's a dangerous way to think. But when you look at the fact that Iowa and Baylor were Cincinnati's last two opponents, both came to Cincinnati. How do those games go? Iowa State beat them by 20. Baylor maybe could have lost there. I know Bill Connolly's postgame win expectancy still had about a 65% chance to win for Baylor. Plus, Iowa State comes in on a rest advantage. It's not often that I don't really dive into the nuts and bolts of these games and get into the individual matchups. But yeah, man, hey, look, aggregate power ratings favor Iowa State by over a field goal on the road. And this may be my underthink game of the year, but it's Iowa State for me. What say you?
Yeah, Brett, this is I like this game too, and I am a little surprised it's ESPN Plus. I guess they do have to put some content on there to get subscribers for ESPN Plus. They can't be putting all of the lowest rated college football games on there. So I like this one. It has a watchability score of 6.6. Two of my favorite head coaches in college football, to be completely honest. And I have no affinity or ties to these schools in particular. I just like these coaches and how they build programs and what they do in the college football space. So they're having two very different seasons. I have Iowa State minus 4.5 in this one. It's a 62% win expectancy for the Cyclones. Iowa State's number 44 overall in my power ratings. Cyclones have the nation's number 14 defense. Really, really good defense, which we've seen year in, year out in names. It's number 2 in the Big 12 behind only Texas. But also, like we've seen kind of year in and year out names, Iowa State has the conference's worst offense at number 79. But that's actually the best I've had this unit ranked all season, Brett. At 3 and 4, Baylor has 1.3 fewer wins than I projected in the preseason through week 8. The Bears have been downgraded 10.8 points since the preseason, Brett. I know. It's more than any other Power 5 team. It's number 3 nationally. Only Temple and Southern Miss have experienced a larger power rating downgrade in season. And to make matters worse, at number 73, Baylor's power rating ranking has fallen 45 spots since the preseason. That's 6 more than the second team on this list, which is Michigan State. So nobody's fallen more in the rankings than Baylor. Only 2 teams fallen more in the power rating. So it has not been the season we expected in Waco. The Baylor offense is number 78. The defense is number 83. Not only do my numbers favor Iowa State on both sides of the ball, the Cyclones have the rest advantage, as you mentioned, coming out of their off week. With only one conference loss, Iowa State isn't technically out of the Big 12 race. Things change every single week, but right now they are still in it. But even with the win, Cyclones only have a 4% chance to make it to Arlington. This is due, primarily to the games that they have upcoming still against Texas and Kansas State. Farmageddon, gotta love it to end the year there. Bottom line, Brett, Iowa State minus 4.5, 38% chance that Baylor wins back-to-back games for the first time this season.
I do like Dave Aranda as well. And I thought last year was maybe like we lost all of our players after coming off the Big 12 championship, and that happens every year, especially in the Big 12. You see with TCU this year. And I thought it might have been just a maybe one-year blip, and I expected them fully to rebound and be in the mix. I don't know if Aranda's going to be around long enough to build this program back up. There will be another program that gets a really, really good defensive coordinator probably for a year or two before he gets back on his feet with a head coaching job. But I've seen a lot of stuff about maybe Aranda not making it past the season, which would kind of be a shame. I mean, there's just the impatience in college football nowadays, and I get it. You have the transfer portal and you have NIL money to spend, so there's a lot of, there's really no excuse not to be able to build your team up really quick, but there's a lot of extenuating circumstances. The college football world is changing, and with the 2, big programs in the Big 12 on their way out, who's to say that Baylor isn't that brand that can step in and be a consistent contender, but not if you're playing musical chairs with your coaches. So I do hope that they keep him on staff here. I'm with you there, but yeah, we'll certainly see. Moving from the Big 12 to the ACC, we have number 20 Duke on the road and number 18 Louisville. The home team Cardinals are 4-point favorites, and this game carries an over-under 46.5 points. It kicks off 3:30 p.m. on ESPN's main channel. I'm not sure that we've seen an afternoon window so disproportionately loaded as this week. As much as I said it's a light week, the 3:30 block, boy, you better be in place with a couple of TVs running because there's a lot of ranked matchups, a lot of intrigue in this one. And this is just the latest one of here. Again, there's a chance of rain as that big storm system sweeps through, but not much wind, which is great. That's what I always look for, but I do just want to throw it out there. There could potentially be some weather. We have to talk about quarterbacks and injuries. Riley Leonard, he did play last week for a little bit. Maybe shouldn't have. He left early. Can I trust him to be better and healthy this week? Dude, I'm not sure. The market's pricing like he's going to be in and healthy, but I really don't know that he is. And I don't know that there should be any confidence. And, there's not really confidence in Duke's favor because this line has stayed at the dead number. I think this is going to be something where once maybe even before we start to hear definitively about how Leonard is doing, this is going to be a line that moves Thursday, Friday, and it could move a lot. And we're going to learn a lot about where the market is. Let's talk some of the matchups here. Look, the biggest issue for Duke here is that Louisville's been one of the better run defenses in the country. They're actually first in rush EPA per play on defense, 17th in rush yards allowed per attempt. And if Riley Leonard isn't 100%, then they're going to try to lean on their backs and Jordan Waters and Jacques Moore. And that may be a problem for the offense if you run into a brick wall, Louisville's defense not be able to throw the ball very much. And Leonard's not going to be running the ball. He is not a threat to rush right now. That ankle is very hurt. It was a high ankle sprain. He returned after, 2 weeks? That thing is not 100%. And, of course, it's not so easy on the other side of the ball. It's not like Louisville's just going to trounce them. Duke is 14th in EPA per pass allowed. Their cornerbacks are just terrific. Jamari thrashed last week, dude. He saw 18 targets against Pitt in that shocking loss to the grand scheme of things, but not to us. We actually did call it, at least it's the spread on this podcast. He hauled in only 9 of those targets for 120 yards. Either corner that he lines up against is pretty stout out wide. Duke's more of a zone coverage team, so it's not like they're going to put their best corner on Jamari Thrash and move that corner around all the place. No, they're going to be playing zone. They trust their secondary. They trust their pass rush. Tackling, though, has been the issue for the Blue Devils defense, which kind of surprised about with the Mike Elko-led team. They're the fourth. They have the 4th worst tackling grade in the ACC, according to Pro Football Focus. Jawar Jordan, the terrific back for Louisville. He's 2nd in the ACC in yards after contact, among those with at least 75 rushes. But he does have the Louisville offensive line has been terrific in the run game. 3.6 yards per carry before contact for Jawar Jordan on the season. That's pretty good. But again, they're going up against a really stout defensive line in Duke. What do your numbers say about this one?
Yeah, Brett, one of the more interesting things that came out of the ratings update over the weekend here on Sunday morning, last week, Duke had the 3rd best odds to make the ACC championship game. The Blue Devils lost to conference favorite Florida State, so they lost a conference game, and they moved up to the 2nd best chance to make the ACC championship game.
Well, that's what'll happen when you lose to Virginia. I'm looking at you, North Carolina.
It's exactly what happens when North Carolina, who was number 2 on that list, gets upset in a game that the numbers liked them by 20-something points against Virginia. So Duke right now is my number 2 favorite to make it to the ACC championship game. Now, Duke, Louisville, North Carolina, they are all right there. This game has huge leverage in that regard. This game has a watchability score of 8.6. It's my number 2 game of the week. I'm very excited for it. My numbers have Duke -1. It's a 54% win expectancy. So Brett, you say that the market right now is maybe thinking that Leonard's going to play. Based on my numbers and where the market is, my guess would be that they don't think he's going to play because, again, I'm not explicitly accounting for Leonard and his potential inavailability, but based on my numbers, I actually have Duke -1. I'd be curious what the aggregate model or power ratings think, Brett, on your end. But that's where I'd be going right now with the numbers. Duke's power rating has been upgraded 9.2 points since the preseason. Only Oklahoma has experienced a larger in-season improvement in my model. And at number 20, this is the highest I've had Duke power rated all season. They've risen 30 spots since the preseason. That's number 3 nationally, behind only Air Force and Rutgers in terms of the power rating rankings. The offense is top 30. The defense, it's been even more impressive. They're currently number 16, as you mentioned, but it's a really, really good defense for Duke. Louisville was off last week, and I'd argue it couldn't have come at a better time for the Cardinals to refocus following that shock loss to Pitt the week before. This is a balanced team. Defense is number 23. Offense is number 28. They have a number 28 overall power rating ranking. I mentioned earlier that Duke currently has the 2nd best chance to make the ACC championship game. Louisville can reassume that position this week, a position they held for much of the first half of the season, with a win this week. The winner will have, a 50-50 chance to play in Charlotte is what my numbers are currently suggesting, while the loser will have somewhere between a 10 and 15% chance, depending on who it is. So the stakes don't get much higher for an October game with regard to conference championship game leverage. Both these teams still, hanging around on the absolute fringes of the college football playoff talk, too. Who knows? They get hot, they win out the rest of the way, beat Florida State in the conference championship game. You never know, but their eyes are squarely focused on a spot in Charlotte here, and the winner's going to be in good position. Bottom line, Duke -1. Again, not accounting for Leonard potentially not playing. It's a 54% chance that the Blue Devils earn their first ever win against Louisville. Brett, the Cardinals are currently 3-0 all time. Not a big sample size, but Duke has never beaten Louisville. Same stat I gave last week when Duke was going to play Florida State, except I think that one was 0-19 or something like that. So a little bit larger of a sample size. Duke looking for their first win against the Cardinals.
You asked about the aggregate ratings. Currently favors Louisville by 1 at home, and that's because I do go in and manually adjust. And it's not always just does he play or does he not. Because when Leonard was out, I derated Duke a full touchdown. I had a full 6-point Doc in there because I really do think Leonard's worth at least that much. I think that was even being a little conservative. I probably could have docked 7.5. I don't know how many people do this because not a lot of people give out, hey, here's exactly how I adjust my ratings, stuff like that. I do adjust for when a quarterback is injured. Like, to take it to the NFL right now, you got Derek Carr playing with a sprained AC joint and looking like maybe that might be the case with Quinn Ewers at Texas too. I didn't derate him for the full, worth of his point to the point spread, but he's not playing at 100%. And same thing with Riley Leonard. I actually still have him docked 3.5 points manually. I need to see Riley Leonard play healthy. I need to see him play a full game before I can go in because I think it's not a great idea to just either be like, yes, he's in, so I'm giving him their full power rating, or he's out, so I'm docking him for what he's worth to the market. I still have him, derated 3.5 points. That's where we get Louisville -1. So it might be wise to get ahead of this, to be honest, if you're looking to bet either side, particularly Louisville. I'm probably going to take Louisville before any definitive news on Leonard breaks. Again, just to be ahead of it, because if you get that notification on Friday that, hey, Riley Leonard's going to sit, or you see him on Saturday after it's too late and he's just not playing it at all, I like Louisville under a touchdown. Even if he plays, I worry about his effectiveness, his efficiency, and most importantly, his ability to run or lack thereof with this injury. Like you said, Louisville's at home off a bye. Yeah, I'm taking the Cardinals. I really do think we benefited a little bit on this point spread from them losing outright to Pitt. If they would have won, this would be pushing a touchdown.
Oh, yeah.
It was a letdown spot, guys.
Yep.
I think this is a pretty solid opportunity to buy low on Louisville. I know that we're very into recency bias, and the market is very quick to react to what we saw recently, but good teams can lose to bad teams and still be a good team. And I think in this today, I don't know if it's like, I'm going to sound like an old man yelling at the clouds, but I don't know if it's like a modern day issue where we're just so quick to be like, this good team lost, therefore they are no longer good. That is not the case. I'm going to buy low on Louisville. I'm going to hedge against the fact that Riley Leonard didn't just grow a new ankle overnight. Give me Louisville -4 in this game. Moving forward to the matchup of the day, in my opinion here, we're going to be talking a lot of Pac-12 on this episode because things are getting very interesting. We may talk about them a lot for the rest of the year. I have number 8, Oregon, a 6.5 point favorite on the road at number 13, Utah. This game carries an over under of 48 points, and it kicks off at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on Fox. That loaded 3:30 window. Be in place for it. We finally have an answer. It's not a great answer, and it's not great that it took us 9 weeks to arrive to this, but Cam Rising, Brant Keithy, they're not playing this year. They're done for the season. They'll try again next year. Makes a lot of sense. I mean, Rising tore his ACL in January, and we're expecting him in late August to be playing. Keithy's kind of a surprise. His injury was a lot earlier in the year, but I guess it must have been just a lot more severe. Either way, they're shut down for the season. They're not playing. We don't have to play, are they playing or not anymore? It appears that Bryson Barnes is going to be the guy moving forward at quarterback. On the other side, Oregon's terrific running back, Bucky Irving, I think one of the better backs in the country, got hurt last week, but he should be good to go. But do monitor that in case his snap count is limited, especially against a very physical Utah defense. We talked about Utah's offense last week and about how USC's defense could be the cure for the common offense, and that was true. They gave up 34 points to a Utah offense that scored, 7, I think it was, total on Oregon State. So, there's some issues in LA, but we're not here to talk about that. Oregon doesn't field Michigan's defense. Like, we're not talking about a huge swing, but it is a lot better than what we have at USC. An emerging star to watch on Utah's offense here, two-way player Sion Vaki. He is listed as a safety on PFF, but this man rushed for 158 yards and 2 touchdowns against Cal, had 149 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns against USC, also has 25 tackles and an interception and a sack on defense this year. People are saying he might be the best two-way player in the Pac-12, which is tough because you're talking about a guy like Travis Hunter. Sion Vaki's been a beast this year. Really just a delight to watch. Utah's defense, on the other end, held USC to just 3 offensive scores. The 4th touchdown was a pick 6 for the Trojans. I'm starting to have I will go on a tangent about USC really quick. I'm starting to have concerns about Caleb Williams. He's kind of like when you play Madden or the NCAA 14 video game, and you try to make like every single play a touchdown. You're dropping 40 yards back and letting it sling. You end up with a bad completion rate, maybe a few too many sacks, interceptions, and then you just shut the system off because you're like, this sucks. I thought I was supposed to be better at this.
Brett, part of me, and again, he's still going to be the number 1 pick in the draft, I think. I mean, I don't think we've seen anything that would change that, but I will say, and you can say this about a lot of college players, the way that he is approaching the game in college will not be successful if he tries to replicate that in the NFL. And again, that's not like a slight at Caleb Williams. Like, lots of players have to make that adjustment. He is not an exception to that. Like, he will need to make an adjustment too. He certainly gets away with athleticism right now. Like, he's just a better athlete than and he's a really good quarterback, but he's a really good athlete too, and he gets away with his athleticism. In the NFL, it'll be much harder to do that. I'm not saying he won't be able to make athletic plays in the NFL, but it'll be much harder. So yeah, he has not been, and the pressure was going to be really high. Like, to repeat as a Heisman Trophy winner, it only happened once in the history. We knew it was unlikely to happen, even though you look around, you're like, well, who else is going to be? Like, he won, and he's the best player, and he's going to be the number one pick and all that. We knew all that. But when a defense is as porous as they've been, it forces him in his mind to think, man, I've got to just go win this game. Me and this offense, we got to go win this game. And when you play like that week in and week out, and the competition you face gets better, as it's been doing for USC, you see what happens. I don't think in the NFL he's going to feel like he has to force everything the way he feels like maybe he has to force that now. But I agree. It hasn't been all roses for Caleb Williams this year. And I don't think we expected it to be, but yeah, it's really starting to show up here recently. Again, USC's still a good football team. He's still a really good player. I think he'll probably be the number one pick in the draft. If he's not, it'll probably be a surprise, or be one of those late things where 2 weeks out you start hearing chatter. It's like, oh wait, all of a sudden now he's not, and then he could fall to, I don't know, certainly not outside the top 5. But I'm with you. It's a long way of saying I agree with you.
Yeah, we need to wrangle him back in, a bit more decisiveness, a bit more ball out, a little bit quicker, because he currently leads the country in average time to throw almost 3.5 seconds, because he's dancing around back there. Anyway, back to the two teams actually playing this game. Talking about another quarterback that's terrific, Bo Nix. He's not going to play himself into that box. That's for sure. His 85.4% adjusted completion rate is the best in the country. He's one of just 4 quarterbacks with 200 dropbacks and 2 or fewer turnover-worthy throws. Kelly, I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you name the other 3?
I assure you I cannot name the other 3. I will try to guess. So is Penix one? I would say
no.
He's not one. Okay, so now I really don't know. I would say JJ McCarthy, but I don't think he's had 200 dropbacks because he hasn't played enough. So, dude, I literally cannot name that. I mean, Jordan Travis, but I don't think he's probably had more than 2. So, yeah, I have no idea.
Drew Aller, obviously, he's throwing 5-yard hitches the whole time, so not many turnover-worthy throws. North Texas is Chandler Rogers. Landed him in the transfer portal from ULM. He's been awesome. And, drum roll, Graham Mertz.
Yeah, dude, I would not have gotten any of those 3. No,
Graham
no
Mertz.
way. No way.
Goodness, yeah. When I saw Graham Mertz, I was like, you got to be kidding me. He's actually quietly having a pretty good year down there in Florida. Oregon, though,
I was high on Florida. I wanted on the record.
Yeah, you were.
I had Florida number 24, 25 preseason.
Yep.
Everyone said crazy, no way. We'll see. They got a big test this weekend. We'll see.
Yeah, Oregon, the number 1 most efficient run game in the country for now a second year in a row, and that's under 2 different offensive coordinators. This wasn't just Kenny Dillingham doing it. Like, Will Stein goes up there from UTSA and is doing the same thing. But Utah, they're not allowing a whole lot on the ground. Where they do tend to give up yardage is explosive passes through the air. They're actually outside the top half nationally in 20 and 30-yard passes allowed. So you can throw the ball downfield on them. I think the Ducks are going to need to look to their star receiver, Troy Franklin, a bit more here. Bo Nix this season, like I said, it's a lot of short stuff. 6.4 ADOT, that average depth of target, that is the second lowest in the country. When you're looking at his receiver, Franklin, though, his ADOT is 12.3. So he's the guy that goes down the field and they gun it to him. We're going to need a big game from Troy Franklin if Oregon wants to succeed in this one.
Yeah, Brett, somehow I got off track there talking about Caleb Williams and USC or Graham Mertz in Florida. Like, no, but my bad. This is the number 1 game of the week. Watchability score of 9.3. I'm very, very excited for this one. My most deserving rankings disagree with the AP poll on which team should be ranked higher here. I have Utah number 10 in the resume rankings and Oregon number 16. So again, based on what they've accomplished on the field this year relative to expectations of the average top 25 team. But I do agree with Vegas on who should be favored in this game. I actually agree on the spread too, Brett. My model has Oregon -7. It's a 69% win expectancy for the Ducks. Despite the win against Washington State last week, Oregon fell from number 5 to number 9 in my power ratings. That regression was due to the defense, falling from number 21 to number 27. The offense actually improved, at least with regard to their unit ranking. They are now ranked a season best number 2 nationally, behind only, I have a new number 1 offense. Brett, take a guess who it is? Hasn't been number 1 all year.
Well, it wasn't Washington, not USC, it's not Ohio State. Who is it?
Those are all the teams that have been number one. I now have LSU number one.
Don't say that too loudly. People haven't caught up yet.
Okay, sorry for spoiling it for all you out there trying to take advantage. This LSU offense is legit. Jaden Daniels playing very, very well. He would have been a decent guess for the question that the trivia question you posed, but I think certainly more than 2 turnover worthy plays. But he is playing outstanding. Could end up being a Heisman Trophy candidate. They probably can't afford to lose too many more games. You don't see the trophy winner getting more than 2 losses often. I think Robert Griffin did, and maybe Lamar as well are two recent examples. But anyway, timing couldn't be better for the Bo Nix-led offense to be peaking, at least in terms of their unit ranking, because based on my current numbers, at number 10 nationally, the Utah defense is the best opposing defense that the Ducks will play all season. Always a good defense there in Salt Lake. But for as good as the Utah defense has been, the offense has struggled this year. It's understandable, right? I mean, no Cam Rising. We thought coming into the year, he was questionable for week 1. And now, as you mentioned, he's been shut down for the year, not playing at all. So I understand them not living up to the expectations that the model had on the preseason, but nevertheless, Brett, it's been probably worse than I would have guessed without him too. So I give you some leniency, but at some point, they got to figure it out on that side of the ball. This unit now ranks number 9 in the Pac-12. It's number 52 in the nation. The Utes are number 21 overall in my power ratings. Rice-Eccles is one of the best home fields in the country. I mean, that's a tough place to play. Now, they are playing this game at, what would that be, 1 local time, I think? They're Mountain Time. So 1:30 local time. But my numbers give Oregon the advantage on both sides of the ball here. The winner of this game will have the second best chance to make it to Las Vegas. If Oregon loses, they're still squarely in the mix, actually, given their projected strength and what they still have in front of them. A loss all but eliminates Utah based on my current numbers. Oregon needs this game to stay in the CFP hunt, too. A win would give the Ducks a 22% chance to make the Final Four based on my numbers. Bottom line, I have Oregon -7 with a 31% chance that Utah moves to 4-1 in conference play, which I know I just got done saying, like, the offense needs to be better and all that, but, like, if you would have told Utah fans, hey, given the schedule you're going to play, after the Oregon game, you're going to be 4-1 in conference, and Cam Rising hasn't played a snap all year, in August, I feel like they probably would have taken that.
That's what happens when you have a top 5 coach
10
in the
for
country.
me, but 10? Coach, yes, and a top 10 defense to go with it. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. He is he's top 5. He's top 10 at least, I'd say. He's been there for a long time.
Saban, Harbaugh, Smart, Whittingham, like so many. Very few coaches do more with less.
Agreed.
And Kyle Whittingham will win a game no matter what. He'll get you in a rock fight, or he'll put up 65 points in a game to beat you. Like, it's what he does. I'm going to say he's a top 5 coach. I know there's people screaming at me about other people on the other end of this, but look, I can't lay the points in Rice-Eccles with Oregon. I just can't. The Utes have not lost a game at home in a non-COVID year with fans since week 3 of the 2018 season.
Wow. Did not realize that.
Yeah. Even with all the question marks, I'm taking Utah with the points at home because, I do think Oregon is a juggernaut. I can't just look at the home track record and say, okay, well, they're never going to lose again. That's it's a logic fallacy. But Oregon is a very good football team. I think Utah at least keeps this one close. It was -7 earlier in the week. Be patient if you can take that 7 again. People are obviously on that side. I'm taking Utah with the points at home in this one. All right, moving forward, we have the SEC on tap. Number 1, Georgia. How often have we talked about Georgia on this podcast? Like, not at all.
They haven't played anybody, Brett.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Georgia, a 14.5-point favorite against Florida with an over-under of 47 points. This game kicks off at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on CBS. It is the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. I think they've moved away from that branding, but I'm here to say no. The fans have not moved away from that branding.
Me too.
It's a great. It's a neutral cider. I know the fans like that. It's a great rivalry. It has not been a close rivalry as of late, though. The favorite has covered in 7 of the last 8, and 8 of the last 9 games were decided by double digits with a 20.2 average margin of victory. So we're talking about, they don't like each other, and then one team beats the crap out of the other one. Typically how this game has gone recently. Brock Bowers, of course, is out with the ankle sprain. And the backfield is actually banged up for Georgia this year. This was crazy. I love this. Bowers nearly doubled up the yards after catch of the second place tight end in the country. And of all the other tight ends that are outside the top 4 in YAC, he at least doubled them up. So he has 400 yards of YAC on the season. He's not playing for the rest of the year, but it's going to take. I'll be honest, I don't know if anybody else can catch him. We're through 8 weeks, and he's still doubled up the second place almost. So he might still finish the king of yak even without playing back half of the season here. 3 starters for Florida are questionable. This team's been banged up all season long. I've said it a couple times. I don't know if they're over-reporting their injuries. I don't know if they're being proactive and transparent more so than anybody else. This is a hurt team, and most notably Eugene Wilson, a receiver who is a big contributor, even though Ricky Pearsall is kind of the guy there. And then starting center, Kingsley, I always try for last names. I'm not trying this one. Their starting center is also questionable for this game. He's missed a lot of time this year. Georgia on the other side, they're 1-5-1 against the spread this season. They're failing to cover by over 5 points per contest. I have shout out Brad Powers for collecting and sharing that stat. He's the one that put that out there on Twitter. Not great. And I think that does, a lot of people say they're against the spread margin. Doesn't really matter. And I agree in most senses, especially if you're looking at a team that's 500 or just a game or two over. But when you're talking about 1-5-1, that means that the market's expectations for Georgia are much above what they're currently at. And I think it's starting to catch up a little bit, but they're not covering, which means that the odds makers are simply just overshooting Georgia's potential here. And I do think that matters a little bit. I know quarterback Carson Beck hasn't been the most exciting quarterback in the country, but honestly, he's kind of solid quietly. He's one of the better intermediate passers in the country. And, does that regress without Bowers? Probably a little bit. If you look at it, his average depth of target dropped from 10.8 to 10.4 to 7.2 against Vanderbilt. I'm not sure if that's a product of the matchup or not yet. It's a 1-game sample size. I really do need to see more. Graham Mertz on the other side. Brought him up earlier. This is the Graham Mertz show. He hasn't been bad, man. He's been really risk-averse, but not bad. And that's something I was banging the table saying, this is a terrible... No, he's been pretty good. He's coming off his best game of the season by far, 423 yards, 3 touchdowns, 11.2 ADOT. That's all season highs. Of course, Georgia's defense is not South Carolina's defense, though.
Totally agree. And you said it, Brett. The world's largest outdoor cocktail party. I don't care if they've gotten away from it or not. They've also gotten away from the Red River Shootout. Doesn't mean that I change the way I think about and talk about these games. One of only 3 regular season games that I support taking place at a neutral site, Brett. It is along with the Red River Shootout. And, of course, Army-Navy. I've actually talked about how I think this game, personally, I think this game would be better in Athens and in Gainesville. But I know these fan bases are very adamant that it remain neutral sites. So who am I as, an outsider to either of these teams, an outsider to the SEC, to come in and try to change a tradition that they really love? If I'm going to stand over here on my high horse and talk about how I love traditions, well, Kelly, if you love traditions, leave this one alone. And so I'm good with this one being neutral site. I do think it's a really fun game. I think it could be exciting on campus, but we'll leave it where it is. This game has a watchability score of 7.8. Given the rivalry nature of this, I'd personally probably like to see it with a higher score. The main reason that it's being downgraded, though, is because the projected competitiveness component. Again, I'm looking at average quality, projected quality, and projected competitiveness. 2 pretty quality teams, I'd say. Georgia, of course, higher in the power ratings. And I've been high on Florida all year relative to I think what most would think. But with a spread of minus 14.5, that's what my numbers make it. The competitiveness component gets dinged a little bit. 84% win expectancy for the Dogs. At number 10, this is the lowest I've had Georgia power rated since 2016. That was Kirby's first year in Athens. Dogs have been downgraded 7.2 points since the preseason. That's 5th most nationally. But Brett, I've said this over and over on this show and on other places throughout this year. Georgia doesn't have to be better than the 2021 and 2022 versions of itself. It only has to be better than the teams on its schedule in 2023. And that's exactly how my model views the Dogs. It makes them a favorite of at least a field goal in every remaining regular season game. Now, those future projected spreads have come down as the season's gone along. As I mentioned, I've downgraded Georgia throughout the year, but they're still a favorite of a field goal or more in every remaining game.
You know what, though? This is exactly where Kirby Smart wants to be.
Oh, yeah. Oh, totally.
This is exactly where Georgia wants to be. The fact that they're being disrespected at number 10 and... I have a bad feeling about this. I really do. We talked about this being 2007 all over again, and we're maybe going to end up with the same 4 teams at the end of the day.
Well, you want to talk about him being able to play a disrespect card. Georgia should not. I guess I won't go as far as to say it won't be, but Georgia absolutely should not be number 1 in the committee's rankings on Halloween night, which, again, as we know, those are the ones that matter. You can agree with them, you can disagree with them, you can wave your fist at the clouds. That's what it is. And I'm going to argue about them too, because that's what I do. But they won't be number one in those. I don't believe. They shouldn't be. And that's where Kirby's going to be like, guys, look, we've only lost one game since November 2020. And here they are putting us at number 3, probably. I mean, maybe 2, as low as 4. Anyway, Kirby's going to have his motivation. I appreciate you considering that he's thinking about my numbers or seeing my numbers. He's certainly not seeing them power rated number 10 or most deserving number 8, but he will see the CFP numbers. You can't not, and he will use that for sure. And Georgia is a really good football team. They're going to be just fine. Like I said, their favorite each game the rest of the way. Both teams coming out of their off week, as they always do leading into this one. It's like LSU, Alabama. I do like how it's the SEC. It's other conferences too. I mean, when you're smart about scheduling, and you've got your biggest teams playing their biggest rivalry games, if you will, you schedule in such a way that both teams have equal rest. Either they're both coming off a bye, which the SEC does a really good job of, or neither are coming off a bye. You can't always do it, I understand, but I do really like how these two teams typically, we'll see how it shakes out in the new SEC 16 teams starting next year. I like how both these teams come out of their off week to play each other here. So no rest advantage is a short way of saying it. Georgia should have the edge on both sides of the ball, though. They have the number 7 offense, the number 9 defense by my numbers. Based on my current numbers, this is the best opposing defense that Florida will face all season. Not surprising. The Georgia defense is always really good. Gators, number 33 overall, number 56 on defense. They're a season best, number 23 on offense. You talked about it, Brett, that Graham Mertz-led offense. They're playing well, and he's not making mistakes that have plagued him in the past. So if he can avoid those turnover-worthy plays, as you talked about earlier, who knows? This game could absolutely, with no Brock Bowers and an extra week to scheme it up for Florida. I know Georgia had it too. It could be closer than what we're expecting. As things stand, Georgia currently has an 80% chance to win the East, a 43% chance to make the CFP. With a win, those chances improve to 85% and 49% respectively. A loss only drops Georgia to a 60% chance to make it to Atlanta, but the Dogs would have just a 13% chance to make the CFP. Again, there's not a lot of meat on the schedule for them to get back up there. Now, if they're a one-loss SEC champion, 2-time defending national champions, the committee won't leave them out, whether their resume deserves it or not. My numbers aren't looking at what the committee's going to say. My numbers are looking strictly at the numbers, which is why I have the 13% chance with a loss. A win for Florida sees their chances to win the East improve from 1% to 16%. So it's still a long shot, but they stay on the fringes of that race if they can pull off this shock win. Bottom line, Georgia minus 14.5, 16% chance that Florida stays in that SEC East race.
I've seen it before. This isn't metrics. This isn't matchups. This isn't any of that. But this feels like a game where Georgia just kind of puts their foot down. They did it against Kentucky. Everyone's like, I don't know, Kentucky. And they're like, no. This kind of feels like that kind of thing brewing. I know Florida's probably a little bit better, but
I think so.
Really,
a little bit.
All right, from the big-time SEC to the big-time Sun Belt, we're talking Troy, a 4.5-point road favorite at Texas State. We've talked way more Texas State than we've talked Georgia on this podcast so far this year. This game carries an over-under of 52.5 points. Kicks off at 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN+. There's rain likely for this game, but not much wind. Do watch the weather, though, as storms are expected on Friday night. And if that pushes into Saturday afternoon, evening, we could be talking about some impacts to the game. Just keep an eye out there. A win by either team locks up bowl eligibility, which would be Texas State's first bowl game ever since coming up to the FBS, which is really exciting. I kind of feel like it's inevitable for Texas State at some point, but we'll see if they can lock it down at home this week on, I do believe it is their homecoming. Texas State has also never beaten Troy. They're 0-8, but they did nearly hand them their third loss of the season last year. Not bad, considering Texas State was pretty poor, and Troy ended up winning 12 games. Like I've said, we've talked 3 more Texas State games this season than I thought we would. I hoped that we could have talked about the Bobcats because they have this new exciting coaching staff and offense, but I didn't know if we'd actually get the chance to. But hey, here we are, man. They continue to roll both offensively and defensively. They're 10th in offensive success rate, 19th in EPA per play, and the pass rush is there too. Ben Bell, I've talked about him a couple of times here. He still leads the country in pass rush win rate among the primary defensive linemen. Troy's offensive line has had some issues this year, so I think that there is a chance that they could be able to get in there. Troy, their running back, Kamai Vidal, he leads the nation in rushing yards. And the reason I knew that without even having to look it up is because the Pro Football Focus kept putting out the Power 5 leader, Power 5 leader, Power 5 leader in rushing yards, and everyone's like, why are you doing this? Like, there's a different leader, and Vidal is the current rushing yards leader with 954 yards. He averages nearly 3.6 yards after contact. Texas State is 41st in EPA per rush allowed, so a pretty good run defense. And Troy's defense is on a roll, too. They've allowed 10 total points in their last 3 games heading into the bye week that they're now coming off of. There was Army's quarterback was a backup. They played Arkansas State, but they held Georgia State on the road just 7 points. I see you made a note here that Texas State did beat Troy in 1997. Sorry, as a member of the FBS, I should have pointed that out. They're 0-8 against Troy in the FBS. That's my fault. Thanks for the clarification there, though. I do appreciate that because I know some people were like, what are you talking about? Texas State in their last 2, it's not been great. They squeaked out a last-second win against ULM and then lost outright in a game that they really should not have, that they were in control of, to Louisiana. They've kind of played to everyone's level. They're kind of like Florida State. Florida State's played to everyone's level. Texas State's kind of played to everyone's level. They allowed 36 points to Southern Miss. That Nevada win was closer than it needed to be at home. We just talked about ULM. So I'd like to see them play to their level, not down to their opponents. But if they're playing to their opponent's level, pretty good week to do so.
Yeah, no doubt, Brett. And this is going to be a good game. It's got a watchability score of 5.8, which, is actually, if I almost feel like I need 2 scales, one for a Power 5 matchup, one for a G5 matchup, not to do anything other than to delineate really what the importance of these games are at their respective levels, because when the main component is average quality, I mean, there are some G5 programs who are in the top 40 by power ratings, but there aren't many. So when that's the main component, these watchability scores get almost automatically downgraded for G5s because they're on the scale of the P5s, which, as we know, in some cases that's appropriate, and many it's not. So 5.8, it could probably be better. It's definitely better in terms of impactfulness in the Sun Belt and in the G5 ranks. So my model makes this one Troy minus 7.5. It's a 71% win expectancy for the Trojans. At 5-2, coming off 4 straight wins, this is the best Troy's resume metrics have been all season. But more importantly, Trojans 3.3 K Ford rating, that's a season best. The offense is number 86, which is decent for a G5 team. But the story is the Trojans' defense. I had this unit number 32 coming into the year. So I thought they were going to be good. But after 3 straight games, giving up no more than 7 points, again, you can argue about the opponents, and I get all that. I'm adjusting for all that. This unit's risen all the way to number 21 nationally. This is an elite unit, regardless of your Power 5 or G5 designation. Like, you don't want to mess with this Troy defense. For Texas State, it's been an incredible season, 5-2 as well. Bobcats have 2.6 more wins than my preseason realistic expectations projected through Week 8. Simply put, only Jacksonville State and James Madison are exceeding expectations by a larger margin than Texas State. It's just the Bobcats are having a phenomenal year. I hope they get that 6th win. If not this week, then at some point so they can go bowling. Program deserves it. They've been building, and it's really coming to fruition for them here in 2023. Furthermore, on Texas State, only Oklahoma and Duke have improved their K Ford rating more this season than Texas State, whose rating is up a full 8 points compared to what it was in the preseason. I was much too low on the Texas State team this year, in particular on the defensive side of the ball. They had so much turnover, I really didn't know what to make of it, and they have played much better on that side. Bobcats ranked now number 75 on offense, 93 on defense, so the offense is still the better unit, but the defense is so much better than I projected in the preseason. That's why you've got more than a touchdown of upgrade for this team overall since the preseason. Both teams coming out of their off week yet again. No rest advantage here. Troy should have the advantage on both sides of the ball. Their defense is the biggest challenge for the Texas State offense that they'll face all year, and it's not really that particularly close. So it'll be a big challenge for that Texas State offense. It's worth mentioning, though, Brett, Troy welcomes South Alabama to town next week. Those two teams are neck and neck in the West Division projections for me. I mean, they're like literally separated by tenths of a percentage point when it comes to who has the best chance to make it to the Sun Belt Championship game. Trojans cannot afford to be peeking ahead. Like, my numbers like them in this game, but if they're not giving their full focus to Texas State, they will lose this game. With a win, Troy would edge ahead of South Alabama in that race to win the West, at least for 1 week when they play next week. A loss would make next week essentially a must-win for the Trojans. It's already teetering on that. You lose here, there's no doubt. For Texas State, a win does keep them in the mix in the West Division, but a loss effectively ends their surprise contention for the West Division title. Bottom line, Troy minus minus 7.5. 29% chance that Texas State earns its second ever win against Troy. First ever, as you mentioned, in the FBS ranks. If you go back to the FCS, or maybe at the time as Division I AA, the Bobcats' overall record against the Trojans is 1-12 all time, all levels.
Yeah, and you said that the program deserves it, and they absolutely do. I've worked for Texas State. That administration probably didn't deserve a bowl win. They've made some very poor hiring choices, but I'm rooting for them because it's really awesome to see the turnaround in both culture and program that Texas State has had recently. But to me, to be honest, Troy is still near the top of the league, if not the top of the league. Even on the road, I probably lean the Trojans with the points. It's at a dead number. It's moved a point in Texas State's favor, but when you're talking about 5.5 to 4.5, that's not really much of anything at all. I'm just waiting to see what the best number I can get is. Maybe a little bit more Texas State money will move it down a little bit, and then I'll probably play back on Troy. Going back to the Pac-12, and spoiler alert, we're probably going to stick with the Pac-12 until we close up with the FCS here. A couple of interesting games. We have Washington State, a 6-point road favorite at Arizona State. This game kicks off at 8 p.m. Eastern on the Pac-12 network, so good luck watching it. And it also has an over-under of 51 points. Look, this kind of feels like a nice buy low spot on Wazoo. They just got smoked by Arizona. We'll talk about Arizona later. Won't get too far into that. And then they head into Arizona State, who just hung around with USC, with Washington, with Colorado. They also got blanked 29-0 by Fresno State. You know, the difference between those teams in my mind is that Fresno wasn't taking Arizona State lightly like Washington probably was, like USC definitely was. You know, or there is an option. Are they really just improving? Yeah, maybe, probably, especially with the new coaching staff. They had some growing pains, I'm sure. But I want to see how Arizona State recovers after that really tough loss last week. I mean, they had Washington on the ropes. Probably could have won that game until they threw that late pick six. That's really tough to come off of. We talked about it with some other teams earlier in the year. Losing tough games like that, you don't play your best football after that usually. The Washington State box score looked a lot better than the game was, though, when they played Oregon. They scored with a minute left when they were down 38-16. That game was all Ducks. I think it's easier to list off who is in for Arizona State. Injuries has kind of been the big deal for them. Their offensive line is down at least 3 starters every week. Jaden Rashada likely still out. Drew Pine is likely out. They've been playing well, though, with all these bad. Like, there's a lot of heart. Hat off to Kenny Dillingham for getting his guys rallying the troops every single week. Look, this looked like a potential regression for Washington State. If you kind of look at it like, whoa, they're not playing as well. But, you know, to me, it just kind of looks like a bad couple of games. Cam Ward had 8 turnover-worthy throws versus UCLA and Arizona, and he only has 14 on the whole year. They could still finish 8-4. They have Arizona State, Stanford, Cal, Colorado on tap. So I think Washington State looking to right the ship. This could be a pretty good buy low spot on them and a sell high on Arizona State, who had just played competitively against these 3 teams.
I agree with you on both. Buy low Washington State, sell high Arizona State based on the resumes to date, how they're trending, and then what's left in front of them. I'm going to get to that, Brett. Game has a watchability score of 5.9. I have Washington State -8. It's a 71% win expectancy for the Cougars. You kind of touched on it. The season started with so much promise for Washington State. 4-0 coming out of their off week, heading to the Rose Bowl. Cougars were number 8 in my most deserving rankings. Again, those become more informative the later we get in the year, but at that time, number 8 had a K Ford rating of 7.6. 3 conference losses later, Washington State's now outside the top 40 of the most deserving. Their power rating has fallen 3.5 points, which actually is not that bad for 3 losses. Again, you look at losses, you think, oh, they're going to fall. It's not about wins and losses, about how you play. So they have underachieved relative to the bar the model had for them, but not a ton over the course of three conference losses. And even with all that, Washington State is still on track for 6.9 regular season wins by my numbers. That's a full win more than the preseason realistic expectations. Getting the season back on track starts on the road this week. You said a game in which my numbers give the Cougars the advantage on both sides of the ball. On the other side, Arizona State, I mean, they're a 3-point win against FCS Southern Utah in week 1 away from being 0-7. I mean,
and Southern Utah's not really even that good.
I know. I remember after that game, like that was I think Arizona State was downgraded in the top 2 or 3 most of any team that I had in the model after that week. And it was in a win. And I was just like, yikes, like, man, red flag about Arizona State. I didn't think it'd continue to get this bad. At number 92 in the power rating, Sun Devils have fallen 27 spots since the preseason. Only Baylor, Michigan State, and Southern Miss have fallen further in season here. The offense, It's been really bad. Currently ranks last in the Pac-12. It's number 106 nationally. While last week at Washington was certainly an encouraging performance, as you said, maybe this is a sell low or sell high here. Losing to a really good Husky team by only 8 points. The defense, they're now up to a season best 57. The outlook is still grim though, because with a 29% win expectancy in this one, this is the best chance my numbers give Arizona State to win another game this season. For as quote easy as Washington State's upcoming schedule might be viewed as, Arizona State's is viewed as that quote difficult. So bottom line in this one, Washington State -8, 71% win expectancy on the road here for the Cougars.
And look, I know that when it comes to betting and shows like this, it's a lot about definitive statements. Make up your dang mind. I am going to leave the door open that, yeah, Arizona State may actually be improving and that Washington State could be regressing. We've both kind of said yes, but I will put out there that absolutely is a possibility, and I think we'll definitely find out if that's the case depending on the performance this week.
We will.
Yeah, and Arizona State just on the season, like I said, Kenny Dillingham, great job. They've had way more fight than I expect out of this team, especially with the piles of injuries that they got going on all season long. But this is still Washington State for me. I'm actually probably looking to the first half. You can find it -3.5. I would love it at 3, but first half lines are pretty slow to move. Looking at first half, -3.5 for Wazoo, on the possibility that Arizona State comes out flat and dejected after that really disappointing loss that could have had it against Washington. So that's the way that I lean in this game. Our last FBS matchup of the show, we have number 11 Oregon State, a 3.5-point road favorite at Arizona. This game carries an over-under of 56.5 points, and it kicks off at 10:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Be sure to have a little bit of coffee for you. Stay up and watch this one, and you are going to want to stay up and watch this one. I wanted to talk about this game because Arizona is really interesting. They're a brand new football team that they were at the beginning of the year, and I'm not sure that we've really talked about them at all, if not just enough this season. This game flashed, I had to triple check this, Kelly, flashed Oregon State -8.5 very briefly. That also tells me that the models that the odds makers using to set the lines have not adjusted to Arizona. Now, the market caught up on Arizona, which is great, but if you're looking at opening marks moving forward, I'm probably targeting Arizona until they give me some lines that take this team pretty seriously. And it's tough because they're also missing their starting quarterback. Jaden Delores been out, but they have a new kid coming in, Noah Fifta, who's been excellent. He's been great. He has nearly 74% completion on the season, 8 touchdowns, 2 picks, and just 3 starts. I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure Delora gets a spot back. He might be a transfer portal candidate, again, even coming down from Washington State. I need to ask, how have your power ratings adjusted on Arizona given the recent developments?
Yeah, with the change at quarterback here due to injury, but we see it all the time. After the Stanford game, my model has upgraded Arizona since that time to current 6.5 points. I mean, we see it all the time. Quarterbacks get injured. They lose their spot for the time being. Backup comes in, plays well, and you don't get it back. Like that happens at all levels. If Arizona continues to play this way, I could absolutely see that being a potential outcome here for Delora.
Yeah, he's really good. Oh, Fafita. I'm sorry. I mispronounced his name. I saw your spelling there. I want to make sure I get those right. So I like looking at intermediate throws and how well quarterbacks at this level can do them, because that's what NFL quarterbacks have to succeed in. That is the mark of good NFL quarterbacks. Can you throw intermediate? If you can, I trust you, because if you're an NFL caliber quarterback, or at least doing the things that NFL quarterbacks do well in college, I'm going to trust you. Fafita, he's the second best passer rating on intermediate throws in the country. He's behind only Jalen Daniels, and if you filter it out for minimum 100 dropbacks, he's number 1. So it's pretty good. He's doing really well. Arizona, I think, also counters Oregon State's run game really well. They're number 2 in rush EPA on defense, and they're really good at limiting explosives on the ground. I've talked about it before. If you allow a high success rate but a low EPA, that means that you are allowing fewer chunk yards, but 4, 5, 6 yards pretty consistently. Whereas if you have a high EPA and a low success rate, that means you're allowing a lot more explosives. This one's the other way. Arizona's pretty good at limiting explosives. And you're looking at Damian Martinez, who they're going up against on the other side. He leads the Pac-12 in rushing, but he has not been as explosive lately against the Pac-12 competition. He kind of built up a lot of those breakaway runs in non-con earlier in the year. Still super talented, though, but he has far fewer breakaway runs than I'd expect him.
Yeah, Brett, you said you're going to want some coffee and stay up for this game. Absolutely. It's got a watchability score of 8.5. It's my number 3 game of the week.
Wow.
It is not often, and again, we see it with Pac-12 After Dark and all that. It's not often, though, this year at least, that we've seen a top 3 game be in this late night window on Saturday night. So it might be the first time all year that we've had one like this. I have Oregon State minus 5.5. So you said it opened 8.5. Now it's down to 3.5, somewhere in there. I'm right in the middle, which is where I typically like to be between an opening line and a closing line. Again, I don't know why, I just feel good about that. 65% win expectancy for the Beavers. You said you want to talk about Arizona. I'm glad we put this game on there because Arizona is worthy to talk about. I kind of want to talk about Oregon State. I mean, the Beavers were one of my preseason dark horse picks in the Pac-12. A lot of people said that. I wasn't the only one saying that. But the schedule was projecting to be manageable. I thought the defense would be top 30 good. And while I had the offense number 35, kind of what I said in the preseason was, I need to see it a little bit from DJU and this offense before I'm convinced that they're a legit contender, but the schedule really does set up in a way that's really nice for them. Well, at this point, Brett, now, I mean, I'm ready to say it. Like, the numbers have seen enough. I now have this offense number 8 nationally. Wow. It's actually the defense that's in the mid-30s now. So if the defense could, just pick it up a little bit more and be what I thought they'd be. Again, they're still good, but if they could be what I thought they'd be, we'd really be talking about Oregon State. Overall, Oregon State ranked a season best number 18 in the power ratings. 9-3 is the most likely record. They got a 1-3 chance to win 10+ regular season games by my numbers. So I think this Oregon State team is definitely a team to keep an eye on. They've only got that one loss in conference play. Arizona's improved, as you noted, and as I said earlier. Wildcats offense, it's kind of gotten legit good as well. I've got them number 18 right now in the country in my unit rankings. The difference for me, though, the Arizona defense, they're number 69. It's the only unit in this game ranked outside the top 40. UCLA and Utah are still on the schedule as well for Arizona. It's a tough road ahead, not like Oregon State. My numbers assign an 85% chance to go bowling, though. That figure was just 40% in the preseason. So, I mean, by all accounts, everything is looking up for Arizona, excuse me. And who would have thought it'd be a change at quarterback that was made out of injury necessity that maybe spurred this thing along. With a win, Oregon State remains in the mix for a spot in Las Vegas. My numbers have a 27% chance that the Beavers end up in the top 2 if they get it done here. Bottom line, Oregon State minus 5.5, 35% chance that Arizona earns their first win in this series since 2018. It's a little misleading. They've only played once since then, but it's been a while since they've gotten a win in this series. And who knows, Brett? Conference realignment and what's happening. Again, Arizona moving to the Big 12 and what's going to be a great basketball conference, a good football conference too, but my gosh, basketball is going to be off the charts in that conference. Oregon State, we still don't know what's going to happen. When will these two teams play again? What will that look like? So I think both these teams are going to want this one. Oregon State especially. If I'm Oregon State and I'm Washington State, there's just extra motivation all year. And I know these kids aren't necessarily they're not the decision makers and they're not there long term. Like they've got a 4 or 5 year career if they end up staying and all that. Like, I get it. But man, I'm thinking if I'm on that team and all this has happened and my school, my team, my program is being left behind, I know the kids on the other side didn't have anything to do with it either, but I want to beat them every single week. So there's that extra chip for both Oregon State and Washington State all year. How much does that actually impact it? I don't know. But for me personally, I would certainly feel some sort of way about it.
And Jonathan Smith feels that way about it too. He's
a
60% cover coach in his career, and it's at least 5 years. So I get it. You said 85% chance to go bowling. Just being a pessimist and looking at the schedule, I don't know if I'd assign an 85% chance. That's why I lean on your numbers, because your numbers are objective and I am very subjective. But there is a path for Arizona Bowl eligibility. They do have to win 2 games here on out. Oregon State, not easy. UCLA, not easy. At Colorado, which I think is a big difference. Playing at Colorado is actually pretty tough right now. I mean, they're selling out stadiums. They have 150 celebrities on sidelines. Utah, not easy. And then Arizona State, which the numbers expect to win, but that's also a rivalry game in regionals. So I think it's going to be a tough uphill battle. Boy, if you're giving me 85% implied probability for them to go bowling and you give me a no side, I'd probably be betting the no side for Arizona.
I continue to be low. I mean, I got Colorado power rate number 70. I hear what you're saying about, in Boulder. Okay. So here's what it boils down to. 65% chance to win in Boulder, 77% chance to win in Tempe, at Arizona State. They still playing in Tempe, I'm not sure. So there are the 2, quote, wins. But when those 2 alone aren't going to be enough to get them there because they have less than 100% implied probability, right? The other games, though, UCLA at home, Utah at home, both 40+% win expectancies. This game right here, 35%. Arizona State. That's their lowest. Yeah, I mean, dude, I'm just saying, this Arizona team, I don't think you definitely mentioned it. The market might have caught up to it. I'm suggesting maybe it still hasn't. Vegas certainly has not with their opening lines. This Arizona team, we'll see. We'll see how they play this week. If they win this weekend, you got it. That number is going to be north of 90% at that point. 95% to go bowling because all you need is one more. So
yeah.
We'll see. I think Arizona's a pretty darn good team right now.
I hope the markets are, because I know Bill Connelly has them in their top in his top 25. I hope the markets are really dialing in on your numbers, Bill Connelly's, because now I've flipped. In the past 6 minutes, we've been talking about this game. I've completely flipped. I may be a full-on fade for Arizona if we're getting too excited now, but that's a future thing. This one for me, like you said, if they win this, it's like a 95%. This one kind of feels like a gotta have it day for the Wildcats at home. I don't love the number now since it's come down so far. I'm probably looking for a live opportunity to bet Arizona if Oregon State jumps out to an early lead. Man, I can't believe that's psychological warfare, Kelly. You got me. I have now completely flipped my stance on Arizona through that conversation.
Just telling you what the numbers say, man. So you said Bill's out of top 25. I hadn't noticed that. I have a number 36 right now in the power ratings.
Gotcha. Okay, we'll close up shop as we always do with an FCS game. Boy, Kelly, it just rolls, man. These top 5 matchups, they keep giving them to us every single week. We have number 1 South Dakota State at number 4 South Dakota. This game kicks off at 2 p.m. Eastern on ESPN+. I've made this drive before on I-29. They're only less than 2 hours separate these two schools. And this game is played in the Dakota Dome. It is an indoor stadium, which is really too bad because the Dakotas are looking over 4 inches of snow this day. It would have been awesome to have this game outside in Brookings instead of Vermillion. But hey, if they're playing this one inside. Their first meeting in this rivalry came in 1889.
Wow.
This is an old rivalry that people don't really talk about. But look at this. And they had a lot of gaps where they actually didn't play, which is kind of strange. But South Dakota State leads the all-time series 56, 54, and 4. When you're talking about tightly contested, historic rivalries, look no further than South Dakota State and South Dakota. But the Jackrabbits are 11-2 since 2001, so they've kind of owned the series lately. They didn't play between 2003 and 2012. I didn't dig into why. I'm sure there's a really obvious reason. I'm sounding really silly for those intimately familiar with these programs, but it's kind of strange to me. And then South Dakota State, if you back it up to 1990, they're 22-5. So this has just been complete domination as of late, even if the all-time series looks a lot closer. Can South Dakota slow down Mark Gronowski and Isaiah Davis in the backfield? I don't know. No one really has been able to for the past several years. South Dakota State is number 6 nationally in rushing yards per game at 240. And Gronowski is also number 1 in passing efficiency. He's, of course, a threat with his legs, but he's extremely good at throwing the football, too. And across the way, South Dakota quarterback Aiden Bowman is 4th in passing efficiency as well. So a couple of really nice quarterbacks here. And then you look at the defenses, teams are 2nd and 3rd in scoring. So this is on paper, looks like it should be a really close matchup. But it takes a lot to get me to consider betting against South Dakota State. Anything under 10, under 14 maybe, is probably South Dakota State for me, even on the road with an in-state rival.
Yeah, Brett, my numbers here. I've got South Dakota State number 1 in the power ratings of the FCS Light model. I got a minus 18 at South Dakota here, who's number 10 in my power ratings. South Dakota State, man, is a really, really good football team. I don't care if you're talking FCS or FBS for that matter. This team, by my numbers right now, if I pull it up really quickly here, they would slot in right now number 21, number 22 in my power ratings if they were an FBS team. So, this is a really, really good football team who, quite frankly, is just in a class of their own in the FCS. Again, we see upsets all the time. It happens every single week at all levels of football. College football is no exception. FCS is no exception. But it's going to take something miraculous for South Dakota State to not just not win a national championship, but to lose a game this year. I mean, they are that much better by my FCS Light model than any other team in their division.
Yeah, I'm looking at my composite Division I, 27th nationally. Just a tick between Louisville. They're over Air Force. They're over Florida and Iowa.
Crazy.
And they're 6 points higher than Montana State, who I have number 2. But Montana State, I have them ranked ahead of West Virginia, right below Arkansas, above Minnesota. There's some... and maybe this is just because this is truly the first year that I've done FCS power ratings and all of them together. When's the last time the FCS has been this good? North Dakota State's been a wagon. I can't recall them ever being a top 30 Division I program.
part of me wonders, Brett, and again, it's my first year with the FCS Light model too. Part of me wonders how much of it is these programs are just that much better than the other FCS teams that they're playing, combined with the fact that I still don't really have a dominant FBS team relative to the field to kind of set that bar at the top, right? So I've got Michigan and Ohio State now almost a field goal clear of number 3, Penn State for me, which Big Ten East top 3 people have had their fun with that. It's just what the numbers are, guys. So part of me wonders, how does all this interplay together? And I just don't have the historical data on this since I don't have the historical FCS numbers. But no matter how you slice and dice it, the FCS has some really good programs. It really makes you wonder about, promotion, relegation, and all that stuff, which I know we'll never have. It's just a fun conversation to think about, a fun topic to consider.
But I'm not super results based, but man, South Dakota State held Iowa without a touchdown a couple years ago. And I know it's Iowa, but that's legit.
Yeah.
These teams are legit. This is why I love the FCS. It's just more football. It's more the same football. Maybe you get the tag of, well, it's not as good. No, it definitely is.
The top end's really good.
The Missouri Valley and the Big Sky are probably both better than the MAC and Conference USA on aggregate. Probably, right?
I'd have to run the numbers.
I'd have to run, sure. Anyway, that's our show. That is our Week 9 show. Hop on over to our Discord server where you can connect with over 4,000 sports betting fans and get live updates on our college football channel. There you can join a sharp and very active community. I'm sure with the world's largest outdoor cocktail party on tap, it's gonna be buzzing quite a bit there. And don't forget to subscribe to the Lines YouTube for weekly college football odds and betting videos just like this one for the remainder of the season. And subscribe to us on your podcasting app of choice, be it Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, the likes, and drop us reviews if you like the show and comments down below on where you lean in each of these games. Kelly, before we close up shop, please let everybody know where they can find your work.
Yep, you can find me on X at KFord Ratings, the website, kfordratings.com, and of course, over at thelines.com, writing some articles every single week. Love writing and talking about college football with you, Brett, and over at The Lines. So those are all the places you can find me, and let's just keep enjoying college football, man. We're in the middle of the season. It's a grind, and everyone's working really hard. People are getting tired. Players, coaches, fans, right? Everybody. But us. Yeah, I mean, we're no exception. I'm no exception. We're going to miss it, though. We always do. It's going to be gone. In a month and a half, the regular season's over. And then you got bowls. Of course, we're excited for that. Just enjoy the college football season. Tough it out. Enjoy it. Don't miss anything because, guys, it is a long 8 months from January 9th or 10th, whatever it is, until basically Labor Day weekend. So enjoy it. Have fun with it. And I know I'll be doing the same.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. I'm Brett Gibbons. That's Kelley Ford. We'll see you all next time.